yourself out of that situation. Therefore, even though there is no exact parallel to such servant-slave status in our modern society, the fact that it was by far the most common employee-employer relationship in the ancient world means that we will take Peter's directives and make application to our situation as employees and employers. Here it is. What do people see when you and I are mistreated? What do they see? Do they see angry, backbiting, sarcastic, belittling, cold, uncommunicative, withdrawing people? Or do they see a people who have a Christ-like response to unjust suffering? Oh no. When we do something wrong, Peter says, bear it. You deserve it. And that's not what he was referring to here. He was talking about when things happened to us that we did not deserve, when we did something that was good and our intentions were good and we suffered as a result of that. What's our reaction to that? Peter gives two reasons, two motivations for our reaction to respond as Jesus did. And the first one is Jesus' example. He did it for us. For you have been called for this purpose, since Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example. The word is pattern there. His life, how he reacted, is a pattern for you to follow in his steps. We talked about that last week. We've seen it in his response to Pilate, in his response to the high priest, to those who falsely accused him, to his Roman executioners, to while he was on the cross, it was the Spirit that enabled him to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Follow in his steps. We are Jesus' disciples. That is what we do. Now, is it easy? No, it is not. And that's why I believe he gives us a second reason, a second motivation. As if the first one is, in fact, I like the first one better than I like the second one, but it's there. Peter mentions it. Paul mentions it. There is another motivation for following Jesus' steps. It reminds me of the New Yorker who was driving through Texas and he collided with a truck carrying a horse. A few months later, he tried to collect damages for his injuries, and the insurance company lawyer came to him and said, hey, how can you now claim to have all these injuries? I mean, according to the police report, at the time you said you weren't hurt. The New Yorker looked at him and said, look, I was lying on the road in a lot of pain, and I heard someone say that the horse had broken their leg. The next thing I knew, this Texas Ranger pulls out his gun and shoots the horse. He then turns to me and asks, are you okay? We can endure pain and suffering for now, knowing that our God judges righteously. I get that because that's Peter's point. We can endure. The Hebrew writer mentions this about Jesus. He says, look, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding of blood. Consider Jesus, who endured such hostility from sinners. Hebrews 12 verses 3 and 4. So you will not lose heart. Here's his example, but it was not to the point. It's not been to the point. But the thing you see that encases our ability that empowers us, if you will, to work our way through that injustice without being like the rest of the world, without responding that way, is that we know that God judges righteously. And we entrust ourselves, Peter says, 1 Peter 2 verse 23, like Jesus who kept entrusting himself to him who judges righteously. Therefore, chapter 4 verse 19, those also who suffer according to the will of God shall entrust their souls to a faithful Creator in doing what is right. Do we believe that? Do we believe in a God who will render justice. And we don't have to. It's exactly what the Apostle Paul said in Romans 12, verse 19. Never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay. We've reworked that statement. It's really, vengeance is mine, I will repay. That is the natural response to those kinds of things. But Paul says, and Peter says, leave room for God's wrath. If your enemy is hungry, what? Feed him. If he is thirsty, what? Give him a drink. For in so doing you will heap what upon his head? Burning coals. Overcome evil with good. Don't be overcome by the evil. Understand that this is not a self-motivated, stoic, poor, pitiful, me kind of attitude that lowers our head and we lay down and we take it like a man and a woman. It's not what he's suggesting at all. This is done, Peter says, but Peter in particular says that this is done, that the difference lies in the consciousness of God, that we are conscious of God when this takes place. The awareness of God's presence and His never-failing care is key. It is the confidence that God will ultimately right all wrongs. That enables us as believers to submit to an unjust master without resentment, without retaliation, without retribution. Now look, I will admit that this is, as I've mentioned, this is the harder of the two reasons. I like the Jesus example thing. That works well for me. But it's the second part that I have to wait for God to do this. Well, the reality is if I didn't do the first example, if I didn't follow in Jesus' example, if I went ahead and put vengeance into my own hands, I wouldn't be following Jesus' example, would I? Payback time. Look, I want to see justice win. Say it louder, Michael.
Now.
Now. I like the way you said it the first time. Now. Yeah, don't we? Listen, come on, brethren. Admit it. Confess. All right? Right along with me. That's why we love Sylvester Stallone's movies. I mean, for crying out loud, the guy has done 4 Rambos. 4, right? At least 4. Why? Because it starts out where the innocent person, the person always gets hurt, and it ends up with where? In an hour and a half, for crying out loud, he wraps it all up and justice is served. We love it. It is not possible for you to sit through any of those movies and your heart to be pounding when the bad guys get in. Like this last one, it's just called Rambo, right? I think it's just called Rambo. Anyway, and then the last one where he's there, he's on the truck, and he's got this huge howitzer, or whatever the thing is. You know, it's in his hands, and he's just shooting at, I mean, he's just destroying all the bad people. And you're just, come on now, you're just like, yes. Mayhem and madness, yes. They're getting theirs. Speaking of Stallone, that's why we love the Rockies. How many of those did he do? 4 of those? 5? I mean, think about it. It's the same deal. It always starts out that the heavyweight bad guy's beating up on the little guy, the innocent or whoever it is. But in the end, somehow he comes back. Or he bloodied and beaten to a pulp, at least is what he looks like, and he's crying his wife's name. What's her name? Adrian. But he won, and we love it. And everybody, I mean, that's why he did as many as he did, because everybody loves it. In 2 hours, he